Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us. You're probably still up watching this feed. We wanted to provide you an update, and there's been a lot of things that have happened this past week and a half. A lot of things have happened, and so we wanted to kind of break down some of those with our community leaders, our coalition partners, demanding justice for all the families that have been impacted by police brutality. With us is Jonathan McCullum, Minnesota Justice Coalition, Tashira from Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence, Representative John Thompson, Nakima Levy Armstrong from Racial Justice Network, our community leader, as well as Michelle from Communities United Against Police Brutality. Thank you for all of you. I know it's late, but we have been up last week. All of us have been up like into the wee hours, so it's really not that late. So I wanted to hopefully get all of you to respond. Where you could use the chat if you have a question or an update or anything like that. To learn more about the coalition, the work we're doing, and some of the policy stuff, you can go to the website mncoalition.org. We wanted to talk about the verdict, updating the charges for Daunte Wright's killer, Kim Potter. And also providing an update on the legislation, where we are on police accountability bills. We want to also talk about next steps, as well as the Minneapolis Police Department, which is now formally under Department of Justice investigation, where we're at on that. And so I'm just going to toss it up there for folks who wants to start us off. There's a lot to cover, and so also, for those who are watching, it's a good place to watch, but also you can feel free to engage. If you have questions or thoughts, send them to the chat. Make sure you like and subscribe to the page where you're seeing this at, as well as also, feel free to also share with your network. This is one of the easiest things we could do when you're at home, especially online, to just share the information so other people can see it. So, without further ado, if anybody wants to lead us off on just the updates, the guilty verdict, reaction to that, the Stillwater, maybe we can kind of break some of those down. So let's start with the guilty verdict. I guess maybe anybody wants to start us off on that. I know we've all been out there. We've all said a lot of things about it, but where are we at with that, and kind of the response to this verdict, which is historic in nature, but also we all know that we have a lot more work to do after this.
Right. I think I'll just spit out a line. With the guilty verdict, I was very happy that happened. However, that happiness was short-lived, because the guilty verdict of Chauvin is a drop in the bucket to what the criminal justice system owes our community, and that's a stark reminder that if we fail to pass any substantive policy, we will be back in that space again. So I'm gonna kick it off there for whoever wants to pick that up, and we'll go from there.
I think that our community does need to take time to celebrate this verdict, because there were a lot of folks who right away were like, oh no, there was somebody else was killed again. It's like, well, we knew that was going to happen, because one guilty verdict in a trial does not change the system. But when you know what we went through to get there, it is worthy of taking time out to celebrate right alongside the Floyd family. This was not easy. It took so much determination. It took people taking to the streets. It took an uprising. It took challenging the system at every hand. and continuing to be visible and vigilant. So we have to celebrate that and build off of that momentum to continue pressing forward for change. We can't allow despair and hopelessness to sink in. We have a lot of work to do, but this is a moment where we know that the people were able to accomplish something that most folks thought was impossible, even in spite of watching that video of a public lynching in the 21st century. So I personally want to applaud and thank everybody who rolled up their sleeves and played a role in Chauvin being convicted and his freedom now being on the line, because he's going to be looking at a bunch of walls, like so many people in our community have had to do for far less severe situations that they have been in. I also want to thank Darnella Frazier for her steady hand in recording that video and the fact that she thought enough of a person she did not know to stand there and document what was happening. All the young people who testified, all the older people who testified, and those who took to the streets, those who are from the Twin Cities and those who are from outside of our state, who saw an injustice and who decided to not sit on the sidelines, but to stand up and fight.
Absolutely, absolutely. Michelle, do you want to chime in? Or?
Yeah, actually, I just want to say, and I want to echo what Nikema said, which is, what really caused these charges to happen and this prosecution in the first place was what we did in the streets. There's no question about that because, when this incident first happened, Mike Freeman, Hennepin County attorney, even said, "Oh, I don't see any reason to make these charges." And all of this went on. And it was only because of the pressure of the people in the streets that this became a reality. And so I think that's very important. The other thing I want to say is this, it's much is being made about the fact that some police leadership actually testified against Chauvin. I think a lot of it was for them to try to put a separation between them, the department and Chauvin, and to kind of like put him off on his own island as if, he's like this one bad apple and now we've gotten rid of him, so we have cured the whole department. That is not even close to true. Chauvin was and is a monster, but the MPD made him a monster. And my question is always, how many more monsters are there? So, I don't want us to be acting like, oh, we got rid of the one bad apple. This is a bad system and it still needs a lot of work. And so we still have to be at the table for this.
This was pretty powerful, but also a testament, a reminder to all the families, Tashira, that many families did not get this justice. And can you talk a little bit about that? I know this has been an emotional time for many of the families, including even George Floyd's family.
Yes, I agree with. I am so happy for George Floyd's family because they got what they deserved, but at the same time, it creates mixed feelings. For I know the day that it happened, Courtney, George Floyd's girlfriend, she had asked me. She said, "Tashira, I just want you to come out there and stand with me on this day to hear this verdict." And so I went out there to the courthouse with her to hear the verdict. But it did create mixed feelings because I'm very grateful. I'm very happy for George Floyd family getting what they truly, truly deserved. But, it's hard because it's like they got one of them, and that is a celebration. At the same time, it still hurts because there's so many of us out here that are living our lives and going on with our lives and raising our children, knowing that the people that took their lives are still out here. And the system that created an environment for Derek Chauvin to exist, that system is still in place. And the only thing that can change that system is the rules that have allowed this to happen. And the rules is the laws. So until those laws, those rules change, we're knowing that these killer cops are still out here, many hundreds of more. So a part of me celebrates and so grateful and happy for the George Floyd family, and then another part of me, it still hurts because I know that the killers of Jamar Clark and the killers of Cordell Handy and Marcus Golden and Jeffrey Smith and all the rest of our loved ones, those killers are still out here. That's hard. It's hard. It's hard pill to swallow for the rest of our families, but we can still in another because of our hearts, because of the way we love, we can still be grateful that God did that for one of our families. But what it does for me, it just pushes me to keep on fighting, to keep on um because then God showed himself in my eyes and also the people showed themselves. The people showed, all of us showed that we can make it happen. If we really push for something, we can make it happen. So if we made it happen in one case, we can do it in another case. And that's what it wasn't them, the system, the justice system that did this. It was the people out on the street that did this. Because I believe that the justice system, all of the people that were, you know, worked together to do these convictions or to make this conviction happen, it wasn't because they were necessarily doing the right thing. Because if that was the case, they would have did it in all of our cases. It was about their backs was up against the wall, and we had to force their hand. So we gotta, like you guys have said before, we gotta be just celebrating one another more than anything, and knowing that we just got to get back out here and keep pushing for the rest of these families.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for those who are watching this moment with us, and feel free to share. To learn more about what we're doing and some of the policy, you can go to mncoalition.org. I wanted to bring up Representative Thompson. You've been a powerful voice of the people, and now you're a very powerful voice at the state's capital. Can you talk about your reaction not only to this verdict, but just overall, or just what's been going
on? With the Officer Chauvin verdict, guilty was relieving for me, and also painful, because this is like, we shouldn't be celebrating. This should be like a no-brainer. We have to. It's painful that we have to celebrate those type of victories, knowing, like all of us know, we have young men in our family, our sons, who are interaction away from being the next George Floyd. I know Sister Nakima Armstrong has young men in her young sons. Also, myself and Tashira, we have young Jonathan. Also, we have young kids who are like an interaction away from like being behind those disco lights, and it's dangerous. But then, like, you gotta realize that what I'm dealing with at the Capitol is there's people in Paul Gazelka's district that believe that the Chauvin verdict, they got it wrong. Gazelka said that himself. So, and so we're dealing with a Senate that won't hear any type of police reform legislation. They won't even give us a hearing on the bill. And so, you know how much money we spent on like on securing the Hennepin County Government Center and the city with barbed wire fences and boards, and we couldn't spend any of that money in the community. And now we just took a vote where they've agreed to give, I think $9 to $10 million more dollars to state troopers because they're running out of money because of the preparation. This Operation Safety Net sucked the department dry of their funds. And so, like, I'm dealing with a system that's like been chewing black men up and spitting them out for as long as I've been black. And so, I do celebrate the Chauvin guilty verdict. We got 4 more officers to go, and then we got a long summer, y'all. And so, why do we always got to be here? Like, it seems like every year we are right here, and then I hate it. I really hate it, man. Like, every year we're right here, and it just don't stop with the Minneapolis police. Like, when they send a letter out condemning you guys or us, that letter comes from the Minnesota Chiefs Association or the Minnesota Peace Officers Association. But then when you talk to some of the chiefs around here, they say that those letters don't represent their values. And so these people, these presidents of these federations, are also some of the grand wizards behind protecting some of this policy that actually protects some of these officers. And so I think I'm in the right place to uncover the bullshit. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm in the right place to uncover some of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. But then, like, I'm never gonna lead the people. Like, I'm never gonna, like, I was elected to protect every last one of you and my kids, and your kids. I was elected to protect them. I'm never gonna lead my people. Like, we get nothing, and at least we can get, like, I think it's something like $53 billion coming here. Can we get at like 20 million? Because I think we spend a lot of money on barbed wires and fencing. Can we get some solid investments in our community, Jelani and you guys, to where we don't have the need for much public? When crime go down, when you start investing in our communities, thus the need for public safety will go down. And we can start policing our own damn communities. We can heal our own communities. The resources go out to the Iron Range and to, so, I mean, how long do you got, bro? Because, I mean, like, really. I
know. No, I mean, no, that's a really good point that you bring that up. Because, that's what we're talking, that's what we have been talking about. We're talking about a holistic solution here to a problem that's not only complex, but a problem that needs a holistic approach. But we got to start somewhere, and we got to really have impact. So I really appreciate that. If we switch gears, and I know, my general response to the verdict was we're just like all of you. 7 officers of 15,000 to be convicted since 2015, I believe. It just shows you that this country does not hold police accountable. And for it to happen this way is unfortunate, that we have to get to a point where a killing like George Floyd changes the needle. But I think, I always like Michelle's quote that, you can't put the genie back in the bottle anymore. So we got Chauvin, and now there's a lot of officers that need to be getting and be put on those cuffs and walk them back into the population, right? So that's very powerful. So I wanted to bring up Nekima. I know we've been talking about adding more charges, and we've had powerful Operation Pull-Up action in Stillwater. Can you kind of maybe bring us up to speed on that? I know there's been a lot that has developed, not only about Pete Orbit, but also just the nature of the neighbors of that area who attacked peaceful protesters. So can you kind of bring us up to that?
Yes, so we have had 3 actions to date outside the home of Pete Orbit. The first one was on April 17th, which was a Saturday, and over 100 of us showed up outside of Pete Orbit's home. We held a demonstration and we held a march, and some of the neighbors raised their fists in solidarity. But when we got to the end of the block, a man got out of his car after a marshal talked to him and asked him to turn around. He got out of his car, he was aggressive, and got into a shoving match with the marshal. And ultimately the police snatched him up and moved his car out of the middle of the street so that our march could proceed. After we marched around the block, we got back in front of Pete Orbit's home, and he was out there talking to the neighbors. And Jaylani, you happened to be standing there. He was apologizing to his neighbors for the disruption that our demonstration caused, although it was peaceful. And you said he should be apologizing to me. So from my understanding, you began to engage him in conversation, he and his wife. And then I walked over once one of our marshals told me that it was him. And we started having conversation with him. And what he was trying to do was convince us that manslaughter charges were sufficient. He tried to say he talked to a bunch of civil rights lawyers, including Crump, and he explained why he was just doing manslaughter charges. And of course we said, we don't care who you talk to. that has nothing to do with those of us in the streets who helped push for stronger charges against Derek Chauvin. So we want to see murder charges in this case. And so anyway, we wrapped up our demonstration, and then we came back again the following Thursday, right after Daunte Wright's funeral. And that time we had a neighbor who is a corrections officer who was throwing, giving us the finger, using homophobic slurs, xenophobic slurs, cursing at us, very angry. And Mayan Burrell came and spoke. And as he was speaking, the guy came and walked into our protest, and the police got closer thinking he was going to try to harm people. He had a mask with a flag on. He had a shirt that had a Punisher image on it, which is common in law enforcement, which I think symbolizes abuse of people who are vulnerable. And when he saw Mayan, he waved at Mayan. And Mayan Burrell told us that he was one of the correctional officers who he had met during his time of incarceration. We were shocked because of, his embrace of Mayan after his abuse of the rest of us. So we had a peaceful demonstration. We engaged Pete once again. Pete was full of it, just like he was the first time, making excuses about why he couldn't bring murder charges. He offered to me to become a special assistant prosecutor on the case. Of course, I accepted, and Pete backtracked. I guess he got scared because I'm like, I'll bring murder charges. Definitely appoint me as a special prosecutor, but clearly he does not want that smoke. So he backed it up. And then we finished our demonstration. And at the end, we wound up talking to that man who, again, a correctional officer, about his behavior. And he told us that he was upset because the first man who got hemmed up by the cops was a good friend of his. And we said, that's no reason to be abusive towards protesters. We're just out here peaceful, and your behavior is out of control. And then at one point he said to me, are you stupid or something? So I got out of my car. I'm like, what did you say? Because he was drunk, and I'm like, I wasn't having it. So the police came and basically made him go back to his house. And then the third time we came was just this past Sunday, where we had a church service. So Kim Handy Jones came here from Chicago. Her son Cordell was killed by the St. Paul police in 2017. So she came, and we just talked about putting on a demonstration. We said, let's have a church service. So we did. And it was a real church service. It was very powerful. There were maybe 30 or 40 of us at the church service, including Tashira. We preached, we spoke, we sang songs, we prayed, we trusted that God was going to move. And literally before the service was over, that guy who was the correctional officer and his wife came outside, and the wife apparently tried to get into a protester's car. She thought it was the car of a neighbor or something because she was drunk. And the protesters who were there said, you're getting in the wrong car and you're trying to drive off drunk. Something's wrong with that situation. So then she just started going off, and her husband came over there as well. And that's when you saw that infamous video of her saying, get out of here, you effing.
Oh, you fucking niggers, get out of here.
So, of course, it was very shocking that she behaved in that way. It was shocking on the one hand. On the other hand, it wasn't. We know how Minnesota Nice works. We know how racism and white supremacy work in Minnesota, in Stillwater, Minnesota, and that's what we encountered. So long story short, the police made them go back to their house. We remained peaceful. And then when I got home, Kim's son showed me the video, and I uploaded it to social media, and literally the rest is history. We let people know. It's what we encountered in Stillwater. And then the media reached out. Kim and her son did some interviews with them. I did a couple interviews. We talked about the impact of their behavior. And come to find out, this guy's a 26-year veteran of the Minnesota Department of Corrections. He's received some commendations, but he also has a long record of getting in trouble in and outside of the correctional system. How he's been able to keep his job all this time, I don't know. But Minnesota Department of Corrections responded on Twitter the next morning saying that he doesn't represent their values. They're going to investigate the situation, which they're doing right now. They've expedited the investigation. And then the wife, we put out a call to action. People found out where she worked. I got to give it up for the internet sleuths. Y'all don't play. Y'all found out that that lady worked at Fantastic Sam's in Maplewood. People called. Fantastic Sam's distanced themselves from her. They said she doesn't represent our values, and they fired her ass. So she's gone. And I expect within a week he will be gone. That's just my intuition based on what he did and based on that damning video of his behavior. And so now we have put out a call to action today to call on the twins to take action against that first guy who was aggressive towards protesters, who tried to block our march with his car, because he's a former correctional officer, a former police officer, and he works security for the Minnesota Twins. Now, for those who don't know, the Twins have honored George Floyd. They also canceled their game after Daunte Wright was killed in solidarity, standing up for Black lives. So we're saying follow it all the way through, investigate the situation, and hold this guy accountable. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We're continuing to apply pressure to the governor and to the attorney general for there to be an independent special prosecutor to look into the shooting of Daunte Wright at the hands of Kim Potter. We are not satisfied with manslaughter charges. If Kim Potter was a Black woman, Daunte Wright was a white boy, we know without a doubt they would have brought murder charges with the swiftness. So we are expecting equal justice under the law. We are expecting murder charges. Keith Ellison, unfortunately, is passing the buck. He could take this case. There's nothing stopping him. The governor said he wants to give him the case, but Keith won't accept it. The governor doesn't need Keith's permission to assign the case to Keith or a special prosecutor, but he hasn't. But this just shows you how the system passes the buck, how they abdicate responsibility, how they don't stand up for Black lives, how they work hard to maintain the status quo. And that's why we got to keep fighting. And that's why we need to go back to Stillwater again and stand up for justice for Daunte Wright.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Tashira, I wanted to bring you in. I know you were there on Sunday and a powerful action. Can you talk a little bit about that and about that experience?
Yes. Well, it was a very powerful action that was done on Sunday. And, a mother called for this, Kim Handy Jones, who had lost her child at the hands of law enforcement here in Minnesota. And she wanted to bring that spirit, she just wanted to, she said, this is something that has to be done, and this mother was coming forward to stand for another life that was stolen, drove all the way up here from Chicago. So to have someone come outside and call us effing niggers, it's like I said before we even started the live, we know that when George Floyd was killed, it opened up the eyes for many people, and good people came out. Good people started standing up. Good people started standing alongside of us who had already been out here fighting. Well, just like the truth came out and good people started coming out, so did on the other side, the racism, the hatred, all of that is coming forward just as well. People are revealing themselves and revealing their truth about how they really feel inside. And that's what happened the other day. That's a small example of what happened the other day. So even though this person works for the Twins, they hold different positions within the correctional facilities, the truth of their real character is starting to come out. And so I guess it's nothing like, the truth coming out and being revealed. So, but the experience was very beautiful. It was very powerful. We came together in solidarity, and we joined hands, we prayed, and it was beautiful. And you know, the enemy tried to step in, but we did not let the enemy steal our joy. We continued on like we're going to continue on in this fight. That's all.
Jelani, I think you're muted.
Oh, I am muted.
There you go.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's a very powerful action and a good testament. And again, you know, I think I wanted to just chime in by saying, you know, Mike Freeman didn't want to charge George Floyd's killer, Derek Chauvin. People, I think somehow, you know, it's been a year, but we need to realize that county prosecutors historically never wanted to charge police officers. They always come up with excuses. I mean, remember what Mike Freeman said. Mike Freeman said that he can't see. I mean, this is probably the one case that we have, you know, a bystander video that you can see, right? You can see 9 minutes and 29 seconds of some human being being lynched. And he said, I can't see probable here. And so, and people, you know, now we see the verdict and we see guilty, guilty, guilty. But when this case started, it started with the NPD, Minneapolis Police Department, lying. It continued with an autopsy report from the medical examiner that was not honest, protecting killer cops. And it went to the prosecutor who didn't want to prosecute. So we're back to square one again. Here's another prosecutor who's bringing half charges, knowing that when a black person commits a crime, a citizen commits a crime, they find any and all. In fact, I think Michelle was talking about this. I want to bring in Michelle, that they like to pancake or bring all these cases up against. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah. I'm happy to talk about that because, you know, one of the things about Pete Orput that we do know about him is, first of all, he doesn't prosecute cops for killings. He's done a couple of, you know, things where there was some cop corruption, but he will not prosecute cops for any reason in these killings. And he lies about them. You know, he just will make up tales about why he can't prosecute these cops. And so when we were out there one of the times, I basically said to him, you know, if it was the other way around, if Daunte Wright had done to Kim Potter what Kim Potter did to Daunte Wright, you would have charged because, you know, Daunte Wright was an African-American young man. And he has a long reputation for vigorously prosecuting people of color for suspected crimes. He's had a long history of that. He's real law and order type guy, except when it comes to the police. You know, then he just can't bring himself to do it. And so I think that's a really important thing to recognize about this guy. You know, he's not a softie. This guy is a big time law and order guy, but only when it's not the police, when it's other people. You know, so I think that's a, you know, important. And we've got to keep putting that pressure on him. We really have to make him feel so uncomfortable that he cannot continue to carry on. And we haven't quite got him to the threshold, but he's acting pretty bizarre. When, you know, we go out there, he gets weirder and weirder. So maybe we're getting close, you know. It's just keep at it.
Jonathan, or
laughing because you can see how crazy he is.
Jonathan or Representative Thompson, you wanted to add in, and we can move on to talking about some of the policy legislation that we have been working on. You want to add, or we can jump to that if you're not.
Nope, I can go up and I can go up on there. I think in our press conference that we had, I pointed out some the charges that we believe that these charges should be upgraded to or added to. One of them was murder in the third degree, Minnesota Statute 609.195. Whoever without intent to effect the death of any person causes the death of another by perpetrating an act imminently dangerous to others and evincing a depraved mind without regard for human life is guilty of third degree murder. And some examples of a depraved mind include violently driving an automobile, accidental discharge of a gun, and in Muhammad Noor's shooting a woman while on duty as a police officer. So that's one added charge that they could add today. Another one is Minnesota Statute 609.19, murder in the second degree, which is a subdivision 2, unintentional murder. In paragraph 1, it says whoever causes the death of a human being without intent to effect the death of any person while committing or attempting to commit a felony offense is guilty of a murder in the second degree. The fact that Kim Porter pulled the gun out on Daunte is a felony, and the fact that this is like first year law school stuff, and apparently there's individuals who forgot these foundational legal principles that all lawyers are supposed to know. But murder in the second degree, murder in the third degree, and involuntary manslaughter, she should be charged. Kim Porter should be charged with all three of those things, and the prosecutor needs to be taken off the case. And the case, and frankly, the case needs to have a special prosecutor, because we're hearing reports behind the scenes that people who are claiming to be allies are really advocating for Kim Porter instead of advocating for the people, and we can't have that when police officers, when killer cops perpetrate these crimes against our communities. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
Jelani, you know what happens if you show up to the Hold the Line rally? We show up to the Hold the Line rally, and we say, you get your white ass out of here with that hunky shit. What happens? The police would fuck you up. Pardon my French, but that's the truth. Like, the police would protect those people with every bit. And so I'm not surprised that the police walked those two people to their car without like realizing that that wasn't a racial slur. Nigger's not a racial slur to them. Yeah. And we dealt with the same thing in Hugo, Minnesota. Ironically, Hugo is Washington County also, so I wasn't that far off when I said the Grand Wizard lives in Hugo, Minnesota. I wasn't that far off. And it seems like this is a targeted area for a lot of them here in this video. So if you don't have a problem with calling me a nigger, I have no problem not being soft-spoken on my delivery on how I deliver my message to you, because there's nothing soft-spoken about racism. You think about what we're dealing with, though, man. Like, these people are like correctional officers. Think about the plantation, right? Just think about the plantation. This is a new plantation now, because these are idea jobs for people with this ideology. I can make them felons. I can make their ass a hashtag. As a matter of fact, I can incarcerate them in large numbers and send Bobby Joe and Billy Bob from the cornfield to go and be the overseers over somebody said to me that my brother's a police officer and he's black. I said, well, he's just as guilty as everybody else. Because if your brother watched this officer kick somebody's teeth in, he didn't put in his police report. If he didn't put in his police report, I watched Officer Stupid kick this young man's teeth in unnecessarily, then you're a part of the problem also. And so I don't want to hear that. I've encountered black police officers who had the same ideology, and I'm coming with the, hey, brother, and the tone I got was, nigga, I'm not your brother. You know what I mean? And so I want to make sure that I'm clear with what I'm saying. Also, to allude back to Stillwater, these are some of the patriots who thought the election was stolen. These are some of the patriots who stormed the Capitol. These are some of the patriots who I was speaking to when we were in Hugo, Minnesota. They show up to these rallies and they try to antagonize you guys. I'm just bold enough to tell them that I can give a shit less what you're saying. If you're not standing up for black people, you're against me, because we're tired of dying. And so like I have no problem not being soft-spoken to those type of people, because it's not blacks against whites. It's blacks against racism. It's not us against white folks. It's us against racist white folks and this racist system that keeps chewing our brothers and sisters up and spitting them out. Look at Mayan Burrell. How much time this brother spent in prison for something he didn't even do. Like, this system is chew brothers and sisters up and spit us out. The police police officers here are like the key. the turnkey, the entryway into these prisons. And I had a police officer tell me at 18 years old, nigga, I could change the way you live your life for the next 10 years. And as an 18-year-old, I'm just complaining because I'm not agreeing with a cavity search. Like I don't have any dope in my ass. And so I'm not agreeing to a cavity search. And there was a black officer that said to me, nigga, I could change the way you live your life these next 10 years. And I didn't realize what he was saying as an 18-year-old, but he could have put something on me. He could have put something in the car with us. He has the key to how to change the way I live. And so it's not a thing of like these black officers are good officers. I'm not saying that black officers are not, but if you just watch Bob Crow kick a 15-year-old kid, and because he's your police federation president, you don't say nothing about it, you part of the problem too. And you making a lot of the officers y'all claim to be good look bad. And so, like the whole system, we keep saying that too, y'all, like the whole system needs to be like blew up and start over again because y'all got us fucked up. Like, I'm sorry for my French. I'm sorry for my French, y'all.
No, but that makes a lot of sense. And I think the most important thing that we need to be mindful of is that, we're here because of not one incident. We're here because of a legacy of a system that protects itself, right? That protects itself and protects itself with the complacency of the silent majority, and that's really where we struggle, because if the majority were not silent, the system would expose itself very clearly. And it's like, you're right, it's targeting also white people, but the problem is it's targeting poor white people who oftentimes are marginalized and oftentimes are not, taken care of just like other people. But the reality here is that, we have a real issue. So I wanted to jump into the legislation. I know that's a big part of our work. And maybe I'll bring in Muhammad if he can kind of bring us an update. And Representative Thompson, I know you're carrying a number of those bills right now. So Muhammad, do you want to provide a little update, and then maybe Representative Thompson and Michelle and Jonathan can kind of chime in quickly?
Yes, so I think it's huge that that although we did get a guilty verdict for Derek Chauvin, we still have 470 other stolen lives that we still have to fight for, and while we're continuing to fight for all of their lives, we are also in the business of making sure that we don't have additional individuals that will be stolen from us due to police violence, state sanctioned violence and police brutality by by people that we pay our taxpayers, the taxpaying dollars goes directly towards, right, instead of community programmings and everything else. But right now we do have some policies that really 8 bills that we've been pushing, that we've been working with some of those bills being carried by Representative Thompson. But a big thing for us is that that currently right now that the House Omnibus Bill for the public safety was passed, and now it's headed to conference committee as well. And maybe Representative Thompson can talk about the conference committee situation as well as Jonathan and Michelle. But basically with that piece is that's where they kind of go in and negotiate to figure out what's actually going to end up being on the final Omnibus Bill. And then we do have 2 bills that are really big and really the biggest bills. The first one being the statute of limitations bill, and that's the bill that allows families to not have to, grieve and fight and learn how to fight within 3 years. And that 3 years is really a huge hindrance on families trying to, get their day in court and get their opportunity to fight for justice. So that bill is not on an omnibus bill. It's looking like that's likely going to hit down to a House floor vote. And then we also have, the qualified immunity bill as well. That is also not on the omnibus bill. And we can have, Tashira and Jonathan and Michelle and Representative Thompson also pull in. So Representative Thompson, if you want to give us an update in terms of, the conference committee and regarding, thoughts on, the statute of limitations bill, as well as the bill that you're carrying, which is the qualified immunity bill.
To talk about that bill, we had, to be exact, we had 11 police reform bills in the House. 11 of those bills had 0 hearings in the Senate. That was one thing I wanted to highlight. Our Senate Majority Leader, refuses to hear anything as far as police reform. That's clear. As far as the committee hearings coming up, like you should see how they're stacking the deck right now to hear this stuff with their Republican senators who can care less about public safety. So like, bro, my job is to actually like not hide what's happening in this building from the people. And so like a lot of our bills, could have been heard, but then we had like some of our Democratic colleagues also like refusing to give us hearings. And some of them, could have put some of our stuff in their omnibus package, and for Christ's sakes, they didn't. And so when we talk about equity, I ask this question: what does equity look like? Does it look different because it's not what's happening in my community is not happening in your community? But me and Jonathan did get our bill in the omnibus, just a piece of it. But we had hopes for a lot of other bills, and I'll let Jonathan share with that. I was just trying to pull it up while you was talking to me, so you put me on the spot. I was just trying to pull it up on the other computer.
Right. So, like Mohammed said, that two of the biggest bills that we had that we were trying to get through this session were ending qualified immunity and the statute of limitation, ending the statute of limitations on wrongful death. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that at George Floyd's funeral and at Daunte Wright's funeral, a lot of the legislators who showed up to those funerals, standing in solidarity, are purporting to stand in solidarity with these families. Are the same individuals that are causing some of the biggest roadblocks in legislation, and some of them aren't even elected officials. Some of them are just legislative committee assistants and things like that, who think that they have a say or have a voice or a vote in this legislation to bring our state forward. And I think that what's going on, we were recently looking as part of our phase 2 rollout for our plan, which involves getting more involved in the political process after this session, and getting into some of these elections to push some of these candidates out. We were looking at some of these people who were carrying this legislation and found out that they're taking money from cops, from the Minneapolis Police Federation, from the state troopers associations and things like that. And these are the people that, and they're Democrats. So we just don't want to call out the Republicans, because we all know that at least over in the Senate they support white supremacy, because they proved that by their vote on April 9th to root out white supremacy from the law enforcement. But also Democrats are also can be thrown into that same boat. They come out and they tell us one thing to our face, and they try to make it seem like it's all good. They come out to their communities and they act like that they're a part of this movement and that they really care, but really they don't, because the death of our people makes them money. And when they sit over here and the police departments can come out and say, hey, we need $35 million. Give us 35 million, give us 9 million, give us 7 million. That's what it does. And that's why they keep on pushing against this. And that's why they're allowed to do what they're doing, is because we're unable to sit over here and push this legislation. And so the qualified immunity, which would have been big, Michelle and I were on a call today with Ben and Jerry's, who's taken, that's the ice cream company, who's taken a national position on this, and they're pushing qualified immunity across the country. So we're the Republicans in Congress are trying to get them to put provisions that would weaken qualified immunity on a national level in the Justice and George Floyd bill that's coming through there, and we can't give in. We can't support anything that would weaken the checks of accountability within our legislation. that's what they're trying to do. And Democrats are willing to give them that just to say that they are doing something. And I'm really irritated and frustrated with our representatives and legislators who are turncoats, plain and simple turncoats, and their day's coming. So, and when we roll out phase 2, we're going to need people to get involved with that process and help us push those candidates out when we identify them, and we put their information out there, because we are making a list. We know who they are, and we will put them out there, and we will be a force to reckon with in their elections. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle.
Hey, John. Before you do that, I wanted to share something.
Yeah.
We actually rolled out our public safety budget, and in the budget it had things like strengthening police officer misconduct database to build more effective early warning intervention, allowing governments to establish civilian oversight council, prohibiting white supremacists from becoming peace officers, no knock warrants. I want to make sure that's on your radar. Prohibiting or altering, destroying body camera footage, which was something that me and you put together, John, worked on. And the footage being shared with families after 48 hours was in the package. Requiring model policing on response to public assemblies. Requiring the post board to prioritize the goal of promoting public safety, including the promotion of human rights and maintaining the basic rights of freedoms. Every person in this state deserves to the right to dignity and fairness, respect, and freedom from discrimination. And it seems like in our police departments across this state, the human resources seem to find the most craziest people, and they can't weed them out to become police officers in our community. How about you keep them in the community that they live in instead of sending them to our community? Because our community got enough crazy people in them. Believe me when I tell you that. So we don't need crazy police coming to our community. We got enough crazy people in our community though that need mental health services. And you're not funding that. You won't fund that for us, but you will fund rubber bullets, gas canisters, and brutalization of my brothers and sisters. And so I just want to make sure that people know whose voice I'm bringing with me every time I walk into that state capitol. I want to make sure that I send a clear message. Whose voice coming in this building with me, man? And until we get what we're asking for, you're going to get what you're getting out of us. So it's a give situation. If you want us to stop, then you stop. How about that? Or we just keep being out here, a bug in your ear. And by the way, before we go, I'd be ludicrous not to say that some of these people that claim to be so progressive have been in these seats for years. So this happened under your watch. So your words, when you say, we're going to look at everything through an equity lens, those are words. Your actions will show me more than your words, because your words have been all I've heard as long as I've been black on this earth. Your words have been all I've heard. Your actions have shown me different. Like, look at, stop me when I'm lying, y'all. Look at black home ownership in this state. And I'll stop right there. It's just who's at the top of the achievement gap? It's to beat us for learning. Now it's to beat our ancestors for learning. Now they call it a damn achievement gap. Come on, I'm not like crazy. I'm just black. And I've been living this all my life. Some people can unzip. I can't unzip this. You can unzip that blue uniform. I can't unzip this. I can't take this off. I can put makeup on. I'm still black. And so, when you say that you're affecting blue lives, I'm saying it's hard. You're making it hard for officers. You're making it hard to be black. Y'all make it hard to be black here. And that's all across not just this state, but the United States. And so I'm sorry if I said too much, but I don't think I said enough.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Representative Thompson. I think it's really big to understand that, that they were able to, out of thin air, pull out, $20.7 million just in case money. But now all of a sudden they don't have money to fund, community and initiatives and mental health services and so on and so forth. And I want to pull in Michelle here real quick to talk about the status of the Omnibus Bill and, maybe what people can actually do. So Michelle, if you want to talk about the Omnibus Bill here just a little bit, and also what's also inside the Omnibus Bill.
Yeah, this is the kind of stuff that, like, technical junk that really gets people crazy, and it makes me crazy too. But here's how it works. The way that our legislature is set up is everything's in what's called bienniums, or like 2-year periods. And the first year is the budget year, and the second year is the policy year. So when you bring up policy bills in the budget year, if they don't get them all the way through the system, they can put them together into what's called an omnibus bill. And so the public safety and justice omnibus bill is that bill that we're talking about that has all of our different pieces in it of the bills that we were able to get them to put in. They didn't put in all 9 of our bills, which is really disappointing, but they did put in some of our bills. And so the House put our bills into their omnibus bill, at least some of them. Then the Senate never heard our bills. So our bills are not in the Senate version of the public safety and judiciary omnibus bill. So we got a House bill, we got a Senate bill, and they don't look the same. So since they don't look the same, now the 2 bills have to go into what's called a conference committee. And the conference committee is made up of 5 members of the House and 5 members of the Senate. And those 10 members have to iron out the differences between the bills and then send it back to get a final vote. And what we've got to do now, the reason I'm telling you all this technical stuff is this. We need to bug the living daylights out of these 10 legislators, the 5 representatives, the 5 senators. We got to bug the daylights out of them to make sure that the stuff that's in the House bill stays in the final bill. We got to get that stuff. That's how you get your stuff across the finish line, right? And so we really, really need to get our bills across the finish line. It's not everything we want. It's a start. The other thing we got to do is we got to keep hammering on Governor Walz, because he's made some noises about if they don't pass these police accountability bills, he's going to make a special session, or he won't sign their budget bills and all that. He's got to mean it. He's got to keep on, he's got to actually take action. He's good for talking, not so good for the follow through. So we've got to make sure that he is basically, going to be accountable to the community to shut down the legislature, shut down the state, man. We are the epicenter of an international movement, and yet we cannot get any bills across the finish line here. So it's ridiculous. And so, he needs to shut down the state if this legislature does not give us our bills. And so what we're going to be putting up is actions for you all to take to contact all 10 of those members of the conference committee and just bug them. We need to put all into bugging them and telling them to leave those provisions in the bills. We're going to write up stuff for you to make it really easy. All you got to do is, log in, put your name, your address. It'll send it to the right people. This is stuff we're working on for you right now. But really, please help us, because it's not everything, but it is definitely some things. And some of the stuff will save lives. Like one of the parts of the bill, for example, requires 911 to send mental health crisis calls to mental health practitioners. People experiencing mental health crisis are 16 times more likely than any other population to be killed by police. And we cannot allow that to continue. So, this is a real stuff that actually will save lives. So I'm going to encourage you to please pay attention to the actions we actually take and actually take those actions. Okay?
I just before you get going, Mohammed, I want to put one more thing out there that stuck out in my head for this week. Our Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan put a tweet out there that said Minnesota is not a place that is safe for Black folks, and in light of and then we also had a Senate, just 2 weeks before that struck down a measure that would have rooted police officers who had affiliations with white supremacy. And we're still waiting for our governor to respond to the white supremacy piece in the Senate. And we're still waiting for him to come forward and address the claim from Peggy Flanagan. Because he's been very quiet on all these things. And when we get into these conversations with these legislators, they always like to say that, you know, the governor hasn't gave us a mandate and told us what we should do. And then we talk to the governor, and the governor says, well, the Senate ain't, or the legislature ain't doing what they're doing. And now they're they're trying to push some other type of narrative to make it look like they're doing something. But as the people who are on the boots on the ground and putting in this work, I can assure you that they're not doing their job. So like Michelle says, we have to keep their feet to the fire, and we have to do what we got to do to hold these elected officials accountable. And as Jelani says, by any means necessary. So I just want to put that out there in this space, because that's really been sitting on my mind about, you know, what the lieutenant governor said, and how we still have yet to hear from our governor addressing that issue on that. So a matter of fact, he came to Daunte Wright's funeral with a certificate or some type of a proclamation. Right, a proclamation. And I just thought it was very hypocritical and very disingenuous to Daunte Wright's family, because behind the scenes we're not seeing anything. He ain't doing anything. He hasn't came out and said, I support this, I don't support this, I support that. A matter of fact, he's the one who asked me, looked me dead in my eyes, and said, bring me a piece of legislation, bring me something that I can do, that I can push. And then we bring the legislation, and then the next meeting we have with them, he says, they come on and they say, usually people don't follow through. And that just, you know, that just gives you an idea of what we're dealing with. And so stay tuned for that. With that, I'll pass it back to Mohammed.
You know, Mohammed, can I add one more thing real quick?
Yes, go ahead.
It's Michelle. And I just want to throw out one thing. I know people are asking what specific actions to take. They just named the House part of the conference committee late this afternoon. So we don't have actions ready for you quite yet, but I'm sure we will get things ready for you by tomorrow. But there are 10, like I said, 10 legislators that we need to now focus on and put all of our like laser focus on those 10 people. And so we will have that list available for you, and a script and actions to take and everything like that, like right away. We just, you know, need a little bit more time because they just named them late this afternoon.
I was gonna like to bring up to Shira real quick to talk about just the importance of the statute of limitations bill and why we really need to get behind these bills as well.
Yeah, so the statute of limitation for wrongful death is it's probably I feel one of the most imperative, because so many families have ran out of their statute of limitation. And for the families that haven't, they're almost there. Many families are almost at that 3-year mark. And for the people who are watching that don't necessarily understand what all of this means, the statute of limitation means the time limit that families have to bring forth a wrongful death lawsuit against police departments here in the Minnesota when our loved ones are murdered by law enforcement. And it's really, I feel, unfair. And I feel that a lot of these departments know that there's only 3 years, and they're doing things to stall out the cases purposely, so people won't be able to bring forth their cases. It doesn't matter what evidence you find after that 3 years. Once that 3 years is up, it's up. And it's just really wrong and unfair. And the reason that I say that is because, one, families are mourning in that 3-year time. And a lot of times families don't even understand because they're mourning. They're in a state of devastation. So they don't like truly understand that whole 3-year ordeal. In addition to that, they don't understand it all. First and foremost. Second of all, they're mourning, hurting. In that time, there's also an investigation going on. So the cases are open, and you can't really retrieve much while the case is still open and being investigated. So that time is ticking. In addition to that, families are also sometimes, a lot of times, receiving harassment. Doing the officers that are involved maybe doing things, intimidation tactics to silence the families. So with all of this involved, while all of this is going on, the time is ticking. And for a lot of families, you look up and your time is up for filing a wrongful death lawsuit. And so that is why it is very important that we, there should not be a time limit on when someone can fight for their loved one. If everybody was transparent and honest, then there's nothing to worry about. But when it comes to justice, I just don't feel like there should be a time limit on that, especially when people are experiencing one of the most traumatic things that they'll probably experience in life, when your loved one is stolen by the government and betrayed by the government. And so that's why it's so important to our families that they take away the statute of limitation for wrongful death, and also look back, give a 5-year open window where anybody who has lost their loved one at the hands of law enforcement have a 5-year window to bring forth a case if they have substantial evidence to prove that their loved one was murdered unjustly at the hands of law enforcement. After that 5 years, it's up, but at least everyone has had their chance. We clearly see that there's been a lot of, untruthfulness and untrustworthiness with these police departments, and the families deserve that much. And that still does not give our families just justice right off the bat. We still have to go to court. We still have to prove our cases, things that families shouldn't even have to go through, but yet we're willing to do it just to get our day in court. And so that is the importance of the statute of limitation for wrongful death, and why that bill is so important. Tell her stop that noise. That is why the bill is so important to our families. And myself, I'm fighting really hard for that bill because of what I know happened in Justin Tigan's case, and what I know have happened even in Jefford Smith case, and many other cases where the families. Baby, can you stop that noise? I'm on an important thing here. So that's pretty much what we're running up against. I did reach out to a legislator earlier today and asked her about that, and she claims, I'm so confused right now. I feel like people are spinning people around and playing a little bit of games or something, which it wouldn't shock me. But I asked her about the statute of limitation bill in particularly, and she claimed that it was attached to the judiciary omnibus bill, which I thought it had been taken off of, but now she's claiming it's on there again, and that we need to put pressure on the Senate GOP. So we're going to look into that and figure out exactly, because from the last time we looked, it wasn't on the omnibus bill. But now I was told today that it is on the omnibus bill. So I'm just getting really frustrated with being spent around in circles. It's like, is it or is it not? Because we don't have time to play games. Our loved ones' cases is on the line here, and we don't have time to play with nobody about that. So we are asking clear, precise, direct questions, and we want the truth. We don't want to be spent around in circles. So I would like Michelle or John or one of us to take a look at that and find out specifically, is the statute of limitation bill attached to the omnibus or is it not? Because I was told again today that it is, after we already had the understanding that it had been taken off of the Omnibus Bill. So yeah, that's pretty much it regarding the statute of limitation, but it is very, very important to our families, and we are fighting for that bill.
Yeah, I also think it's important for people to know that a lot of these bills that are before us are written in the stories of the families, and I know that when that the statute of limitations bill came about, that had dealt with, when you listen to the common thread throughout all the stories. When I was listening to that, I heard common things that were happening to all the families with their cases stalling out. And that's what prompted the writing of that piece of legislation when that came about. So that's important for people to know, that a lot of this stuff is proven, and that's what we need to do. So, Mohammed, you're looking at I know the omnibus for the judiciary was like 250 pages, and last time we read it, it wasn't in there. But this is the game, the yo-yo that we get put on by these legislators, where they'll pull something off, put something back on for political reasons, pull it off to try to please somebody, and then this is what they do. So it ain't what it is until it's to that finish line, and that's why it's so important that we get these pieces of legislation to the finish line, because we do have a lot of legislators that are playing games. So with that, Michelle.
I was going to say that's a fact, and one of the things that people don't realize is that we actually have one of the shortest statutes of limitations in the country, and and when these cases get sent over to the BCA and other agencies for investigations, those agencies take such an incredibly long period of time, and they do such a poor job of investigating that they basically render the case so that it can't be it can't be sued. Like, they try to make it so that they're protecting the cops, and so then these families have to actually hire investigators to reinvestigate those cases so that they can actually have a lawsuit, or they have to hire a very well-funded attorney that can do those investigations. And most of the lawyers that take these cases are solo practitioners, not groups. And because of that, they don't have the funds to investigate these cases. Our organization does reinvestigations of wrongful death cases. And I can tell you that in a lot of these cases, the BCA made it sound like the cop did absolutely nothing wrong. And then we come to find out that they kept shooting the guy while he was on the ground, or that they shot a guy that didn't have a gun in his hand that they claimed he had. All kinds of things like that we find out and uncover. And again, it's, the BCA and them will hang on to these investigations so long that they'll almost be approaching the end of the statute of limitations with some of these cases. We have one family that the BCA kept on holding on to the man's body for over a year. We had to have a press conference to make them release his body so that his body could be buried. And the BCA had held on to it for over a year. So, this kind of stuff. And, how is this family going to be able to get it together to have another investigation and actually, have a possible lawsuit? This is what they do. So it's trickery, and they're trying to keep us from doing that trickery.
Michelle, can you give us a quick update around the DOJ, just briefly, in terms of the DOJ investigation into MPD as well?
Sure. It's getting awfully late, so we're going to talk real quick. But the DOJ has landed in Minneapolis, and at first, I'm going to be honest with you, I was a little bit concerned about it, because this is our fourth go round with the DOJ, and the previous ones were mediation, negotiation, consultation, mollification, if you will. And so I was like, you know what? I don't really want to have any of these dealings with the community relations part of the DOJ, or any of these parts that don't do anything. But this time is an actual real investigation. And we've had 2 meetings with the DOJ now, and to understand the scope of their investigation, what they're going to be looking for. Unfortunately, they're only going to look at Minneapolis at this time, but they did say that if their investigation starts to show that through these mutual aid agreements and so forth, that there's impacts on the other departments, that we might be able to get them to go into those departments. And we really need them to, because they need to investigate the state troopers, for their role in brutality against protesters. So the 3 areas they're going to look at is excessive force, including excessive force against protesters, discrimination, which we know there's a ton of that, and then their violation of the ADA in the way that Minneapolis police address mental health crisis calls. And so those are the three main areas that to look at. We started raising things like, yeah, but what about the way they treat homeless people? What about, different other areas and things? And so they said that they would look into those areas if we brought forward the information. And we're also asking them to look into the poor job that the Minneapolis Homicide Division does when the person that was murdered is a person of color. And they do a horrible job of those, really non-investigations, So I'm working with at least half a dozen or more families that have experienced this exact treatment in recent history. So we're asking them to expand the investigation, and we're going to be working to try to create forums for people to come forward and bring their cases. I saw in the comments earlier, somebody said, what about those of us who didn't die at the hands of police? Well, this is your chance to talk about what has happened to you, and I hope you will do it. So the MPD, and the question is, has the MPD been investigated by the DOJ before? No, it's never been a real investigation. Everything's been all that fluffy PR stuff, but we don't want that anymore. That's not useful. That's not helpful. And the great thing about an investigation is it could end up in a consent decree where the court oversees the Minneapolis Police Department. Or if they don't comply with that, then they could actually go in receivership. And I think either one of those outcomes would be quite good. So I'd love to hear what Nikki has to say about this.
Right. If let me inject one thing, and then we can kick it off. One of the things that a lot of people have had questions on are, what about if the Department of Justice finds criminal activity within the police departments? That was a question that we also brought to them, and they indicated that although this is a civil procedure, and they're looking for a civil process, that if they do see criminal activity, that they do have a department that they will refer incidences to. So they said that specifically that they want to hear everything from everybody. And they referred to it as throwing a stone. They said when the Attorney General Merrick Garland came out and said that they were going to launch the investigation in response to our coalition's letter that we sent out to them, it was the equivalent of them throwing a stone into the pond that has ripple effects to reach out and branch off into other places. But we explained to the Department of Justice about the relationship that the MPD has with St. Paul Police Department and other police departments around the Twin Cities, and cop jumping, and how the policies work, and we need to be throwing a couple more stones out there. And they indicated that it is something that they're aware of, and that they would look into that as well, and that the investigation will not stop at the borders, that they will take the investigation wherever it goes, and if there is criminal activity, which we believe that they will find, that they will refer it to the criminal division in the Justice Department and have that investigated. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And just to wrap us up, I think we're going to kick off for final comments. So let's start off with Nakima, if you have any final comments before we wrap up tonight.
I just want to thank people for being engaged, taking time out to listen to this conversation, for showing up when we do calls to action out on the streets, for showing up on social media, picking up the phone, calling people in positions of power, emailing them, and using social media to fight that. It's going to take us continuing to be vigilant and disrupting business as usual in order for change to continue to happen. We have 4 officers in the pipeline right now who are currently facing criminal charges. The 3 who helped kill George Floyd, as well as Kim Potter, who killed Daunte Wright. So that's going to take us continuing to be out there in the streets and doing what it takes to advocate for change and accountability. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nakima. And Tashira, I want to grab your final thoughts.
Yes, I guess I want to second what Nakima said, is thank you to everybody. And we just have to keep pushing and sticking together and going after these people. Once we figure out, the 10 people that Michelle was just talking about, applying pressure. applying pressure is what got George Floyd's killer, Derek Chauvin, a guilty verdict, and applying pressure on these people, continuously going out there to Stillwater and then making it out there to Warren Limmer's home. If they don't want to give hearings to these bills, if they don't want to, take these cases, like for Keith Ellison, they don't want to do the right thing. We're going to apply pressure to them. We're going to apply pressure to the governor. We're going to be out there. So you guys that's watching, continue to watch our pages, and continue to watch the events that are coming up, and be ready to get out there with us and apply pressure to these people, because it seems like they don't just do the right thing, just for the sake of doing the right thing. The lack of integrity blows my mind. Even with people that are wearing the same skin color as me. It's really sad at the end of the day, but it is what it is. And we're just going to give them the pressure that they're obviously asking for. That's all.
Awesome. And Michelle, you want to have your final thoughts?
I agree that we have to recognize that as hard as we're working and as many people as can step forward is what is needed, because there are people on the other side that are pushing back. I've been saying for a while now that police have forfeited the right to be able to say what needs to happen for public safety in our communities. They have forfeited that right by their conduct and by their continued refusal to change. And I believe that with all my heart. But let me tell you something. There are a lot of dinosaurs out here hanging on to this system as hard as they can. And it's going to take all of us and all of you and everybody else we can bring to the table to push hard to make these changes that we need, so that people can go home safely at night. And I mean, the community can go home safely at night, because that is not what's happening right now. And, it's not just, it is the people that get killed, but it's also the people that get harmed along the way. And so we really have to just step on it. You guys stay with us and keep doing the actions we ask you to do, because we got to get across this finish line with some of these changes so we can make things safer for everybody. Thank you.
Jonathan, we'll go next.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Nikema and Tashira and Michelle said. I wanted to thank everybody for putting their boots on the ground and stepping out into spaces. Some people who it might have been your first time coming out into space, other people are naturals and originals in this movement. And I want people to remember that this is not a movement, it's a moment. Or it's not a moment, it's a movement. And we all have a role to play in this movement, and we can't do it without you. So I want to thank everybody who's there. I want everybody to encourage their friends, their neighbors, their family members to stay in this with us, because we're not going to give up. We're going to be out here, and we're going to ride this bus until the wheels fall off. So thank you, and thank you, and thank you.
And then Jillian, you want to close us out?
Well, I think everybody's kind of laid it out. I just want to thank also the activists, the movement folks, the people that have been doing this work. I really appreciate all of you. I know it's a lot of sacrifice and time. And for all of the community members, maybe the cameras have left, but we haven't left. And we're still here. We're going to continue to fight. There is a reason why God chose us to carry this burden of fighting for justice. And I personally believe that because there is some goodness here. There's goodness in the state. There's goodness in the people here. And I trust the people here. And as difficult as all of these challenges are, I think we have all the resources to overcome them and maybe show a great deal of strength and change for the country. The world and most importantly our nation is thirsty for justice, and we really need to bring that forward. And so this history is repeating. We've seen people deny us justice before in the past, but it's committed people that were able to go through that, and I personally believe we have those committed people. We just need the rest of the people to join. I always say this at the rallies, but don't sleep through a revolution. That's the worst thing you can do. There's a revolution going on. I remember, I'll end with this. I remember at the protest after the guilty verdict, and I saw a family with young kids, and they're pretty young kids, under the age of 7. And I went up to them, and there's about 4 or 5 of them, and I went up to them and I told them, your parents brought you to this march and protest today, and you may never know the value of it now, but you will be telling your grandkids that you were there. And many other people in the state of Minnesota may never ever say that. And that is extremely, extremely important, that in this moment, you can choose to watch Netflix. You could choose to be at home and be comfortable. But there's some of us that have been called, and we're going to stand up for justice, and we're going to do that by any means necessary, because it's not just about our lives, it's about the children who are not born yet, and we want to fight for them. And we believe in the goodness of people. We believe our nation, we have good people. They just need a little bit of energy and support. And so for all the politicians, the days that you're lying, the days you're, that you're going to play politics on our lives, whether it's fear politics like Operation Safety Net and other things, those days are over. We're going to come forward. And I agree with Jonathan that politicians need to either stand up or get out of the way, because it's time for the people to demand justice. And the glimpse of justice that we saw in that courthouse was a true result of people demanding that justice. And I'm proud that we were able to at least get that for the George Floyd family. But now we have to fight for all these other families. So it's late, but we've been up late, even later than that. So let's continue this fight, and we will know who the true activists are and who the true people are, because the cameras are gone, and now the real people need to do the real work.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night. Yeah.